Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, hopefully having an amazing day. Sorry for being away for the past few days. Unfortunately, I've been suffering from the flu, which has not been ideal, so hence the reason there's been no content on the channel. But there are some very interesting pieces of news that have popped up, and I'm also sitting on some exclusive stuff, but I'm going to be honest with you guys, I was basically bedridden, so this is going to be a hi, how are you all doing, plus also getting into some very interesting benchmarks and some other bits and pieces that have leaked for various things. And we're going to start things out with some results for the 7700 and 7800 XT cards that will actually see an official release tomorrow. I'm only going to go over this stuff quite briefly because we've got a lot of other stuff to go through actually, but I do want to just mention this because I do find it kind of interesting. These results are actually from AMD, their internal documents that basically get sent to reviewers. The purpose of them, if you're not familiar, I'm sure most of you are, is basically to give reviewers a kind of understanding of, roughly speaking, how a particular graphics card should perform at a specific resolution. I.e., let's say AMD say that you should get like 112 frames a second at 1440p with whatever card, and you're getting like 73. You can say, well, there's something a little bit wrong here. Of course, that is also with the caveat that they tested with a specific set of drivers and so on, and internal numbers, well, yeah. Anywho, so as I said, there's been a number of benchmarks that have been released. We'll start with the ones from HD Technologica. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are some standout hits here. For example, Borderlands, you're looking around a 21% increase over the 4070 for the 7800 XT. On the other hand, the 7700 XT, it's around 30%, and this is kind of a trend that goes all the way down. Obviously, they are showing titles that show AMD hardware in the best light, generally speaking. Some standout titles here, really nice games, like, for example, Jedi Survivor. I suspect that a lot of people are going to want to play that. Grand Theft Auto is pretty old at this point. Dead Space, yeah, that's a pretty great game. There are basically a mixture of titles that, you know, I don't necessarily agree with all of the games on the list, but generally speaking, it's a fairly reasonable list. Although, of course, again, it does slightly benefit AMD hardware. They have also showed a variety of games, however, that are not necessarily so good when it comes to ray tracing. Now, of course, we all know that the RTX 40 series of cards does have some benefits in terms of ray tracing performance, and ultimately speaking, you can see that, for example, Cyberpunk with RT Overdrive, well, it's a significant L for AMD across the board here. However, it's not like, you know, NVIDIA cards are exactly super playable either. Obviously, this is where things like DLSS frame generation and so on are going to be quite important, and with that update for DLSS 3.5 coming as well, which of course is RT reconstruction, it's going to be very interesting to see how the landscape changes over the next several weeks and months, of course. So those results are from HD Technologica, and basically speaking, you're looking around a 7% increase for the 7800 versus the 4070, and according to these results anyway, it's around a 16-ish% in terms of rasterization for the 7700 over the 4060 Ti. We also have some synthetic results, and these are courtesy of videocards.com. One thing that did perk my interest was that the time spy result here is around 19,500 for the 7800 XT, which is right around what I leaked actually for this particular card. So the biggest problem that these GPUs, particularly the 7700 XT, suffer from, well, there's a couple. The first is that the 4060 has recently received some price cuts across the board. And you also have the fact that various RX 6000 series GPUs are also basically seeing massive price cuts as well. We're going to have to wait and see what reviewers make of these GPUs. I'm about to say this GPU, but there's two of them. I'm going to be very interested to see how this actually does in the marketplace. The pricing of the cards, honestly, is not too bad, but there's just a lot of competition for them. And of course, one can make a very good and very right argument that, well, honestly, this is the price that the 4060 Ti should have been initially. In fact, it probably should have been even cheaper than this, but anywho, let's continue, shall we? There's something else I want to talk to you guys about, and that's Strix Point. As there have been some leaks actually for the 16 RDNA compute unit configuration. This is a 12-core Zen 5 based CPU, and this is actually from the website performance databases, which again I will of course leave a link to in the video description. There are a couple of course things that are not 100% being reported correctly here. Obviously the GDDR6 memory is not quite what it should be. So it seems like the configuration that is being listed here anyway shows that we are looking at the mid-range option, which again has 16 compute units and a TDP of between 28 and 54 watts. Now this is going to be, of course, a monolithic die, and I actually leaked a lot of the specifications myself regarding this. The only thing is I think I got the configuration of the cores wrong based upon what I've put here. I have 8 Zen 5 and 4 Zen 5C, so it seems like I got those two mixed up. The Halo SKU, however, is going to, of course, be the one that I suspect a lot of people are going to be very interested in, which, of course, is going to be significantly more powerful. Honestly speaking, I'm really interested to see how these products do in the marketplace. When it comes to the performance of them, I suspect that the higher end ones in particular are going to do very well, providing, of course, they've got, you know, the room to breathe. In other words, they've got a decent memory configuration and so on and so on. I believe a video or two ago I did mention that I was hearing a couple of Sarlacc, which again is the Halo SKU products, will actually be in Asus laptops initially, and they're going to have 24 and 48 gigabyte configurations. So the configurations for those will be up to 32 compute units as well as 40 compute units for the GPU. So they're going to be really powerful, honestly. And I'm going to be, again, extremely interested to see how they do in the marketplace, because honestly, it's of course not just in terms of the performance, but also how popular they are and how AMD can manage to market these things. I suspect that you know, there's a really big market for these APUs, excuse me, going forward. So yeah, I'm very excited. Now, there's also a rumor, and this is actually several days old now, but I did want to talk about it because a couple of people brought this up, and this is actually from another YouTube channel called Mystic. Now, what they basically are stating is that Sony are working on a PlayStation 2 emulator. And they are basically saying that, quote, they've got it on good authority that there is a new emulator in the works, and this would, in theory, allow a PS2 game to work on a PS5 console. Now, in terms of whether they could do it, yes, I think this is definitely very, 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 very viable. It's not that difficult to get a PS2 game working on a, you know, even mid-range or low-end PC at this point. You know, you can look at the PS2 emulators, which are freely available, and they can basically run on a turnip. Obviously, the console is pretty old. The question is whether Sony have the will to do this. I honestly do not know, because Sony does weird stuff all of the time. Well, I can tell you guys, and I never actually put this in a video, I don't think, but I did hear this really wild rumor from one of the sources that gave me some of the PS5 Pro info. And they alleged essentially that there was a PS3 emulator in the works that would run natively only on the Pro console. Now, I felt that was a bit weird, which is why I never really mentioned it in a video, I don't think. I don't really know why it would only work on the Pro console. One reason I could imagine is maybe the higher clock frequency of the Pro console is what they feel is needed, because I mean, I guess it depends on how they run the emulation of the PS3. But I don't know, like, I'm not 100% convinced Sony would do it. I wouldn't be surprised if they were considering or testing the project internally for, like, whatever reason. But whether they'll actually, you know, launch the damn thing and make it publicly available, I'm really not too certain. But, you know, with the PS2 info, it's not mine, it's Mystic's. And with the PS3 thing, I personally would not be holding my breath for this thing. Like, if it comes out, then that would be fantastic. Obviously, there are a shit ton of games on the PlayStation 3 that are essentially locked to that hardware. And, you know, that's kind of a shame. There are so many awesome PS3 games, but whether that would work on, like, you know, kind of a case-by-case basis, so in other words, they would have to essentially allow the game to run, or whether you could just pop the disc in and it would just work. Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if it had to be on a case-by-case basis, which would obviously be a little more limiting. On the PC, obviously, you've got a lot of options for emulation just across the board. For the PlayStation 3, you can do some absolutely zany stuff if you want to play, you know, the God of War games or Metal Gear or whatever the hell. So I would love it. Like, I think game preservation is incredibly important, which I guess is a bit of a weird statement since I'm primarily a PC gamer, and obviously game preservation on PC is a bit weird anyway with like the state of physical. But anyway, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think a PS2 emulator makes sense from Sony's perspective? I mean, maybe they'll look it behind a paywall. I honestly do not know. They could do it maybe cloud and have that as part of the reason, I guess, that you'd cough up that extra subscription fee. I honestly do not know. I would be super interested, though, to see what Sony does here. Yeah, let me know your thoughts and opinions. With that said, take care of yourselves. Have an amazing day. Bye for now.